Money screams, but true wealth whispers. On a rainy Tuesday in Manhattan, a woman walked into the most exclusive boutique on Fifth Avenue soaking wet, wearing a faded trench coat and muddy sneakers. She didn't look like she belonged in a world of six-figure handbags and champagne receptions. The owner of the brand, blinded by arrogance, decided to make an example of her, mocking her, humiliating her, and ordering security to throw her out. She didn't realize that the woman in the raincoat wasn't a beggar. She was the landlord, the investor, and the only reason the store was still standing. When a billionaire walked in moments later and bowed to her, the silence in that room was deafening. This is the story of the mistake that cost a luxury empire everything. The rain in New York City doesn't just fall, it assaults the pavement. It was a torrential downpour, the kind that turns the gutters of Fifth Avenue into rushing grey rivers and sends tourists scrambling for the nearest overhang. Inside the gilded, climate-controlled sanctuary of Sterling and Caban, however, the weather was merely a visual effect to be observed through bulletproof glass. The flagship store was a cathedral of consumerism. The floors were Italian marble, polished to a mirror sheen that reflected the recessed lighting. The air smelled of white tea and money. There were no price tags here. If you had to flip the tag, you were in the wrong zip code. Genevieve Sterling stood on the mezzanine, looking down at her kingdom. At 45, Genevieve was a striking woman, though her beauty had a sharp, predatory edge. She wore a tailored suit that cost more than most people's cars, her blonde hair pulled back into a severe bun that pulled her features tight. She was the face and the iron fist behind the Sterling brand, a luxury house that had quickly risen to rival Hermes and Chanel, mostly by manufacturing an aura of impossible unavailability. "Sales are down in accessories," she snapped, not looking at the terrified floor manager, a young man named Liam, standing beside her. It's the midweek lull, Ms. Sterling," Liam stammered. The rain is for poor people, Liam," she cut him off. "Our clients have drivers. They have umbrellas held by other people. If the store is empty, it's because you aren't calling the VIP list." She turned on her heel and descended the spiral glass staircase, her heels clicking a sharp staccato rhythm that sounded like gunshots in the quiet store. She needed everything to be perfect. Rumors had been swirling in the financial papers, the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, that Sterling and Caban was over-leveraged. They said the rapid expansion into Tokyo and Dubai had bled the cash reserves dry. Genevieve knew the rumors were true, but she also knew that in her world, perception was reality. If she looked bankrupt, she would be bankrupt. If she looked untouchable, the creditors would wait. That was when the heavy glass doors at the front pushed open. A gust of wind blew in, carrying a spray of rain that spotted the pristine marble. Liam flinched as if he'd been slapped. A woman stepped inside. She was struggling with a broken umbrella, shaking it violently to close it. She was dressed in a beige, shapeless trench coat that was dark with water. Her jeans were frayed at the hems, soaking up the puddle she was creating on the floor. She wore worn-out sneakers, the kind you buy at a discount department store. Her graying hair was plastered to her forehead. She looked like a drowned rat. Genevieve stopped at the bottom of the stairs, her lip curling in immediate disgust. This was exactly what she didn't need. A tourist, a loiterer, someone seeking shelter from the rain who would touch the merchandise with wet, dirty hands. "Liam," Genevieve hissed, "get rid of it." Liam hesitated. "Ms. Sterling, maybe she just needs a moment. This is a place of business, not a homeless shelter. Look at the floor. She's ruining the aesthetic." The woman, oblivious to the hostility radiating from the staircase, wiped her feet on the mat, an act that only smeared more mud around, and walked deeper into the store. She stopped in front of a display case holding the Midnight Star, a diamond and sapphire clutch priced at $250,000. She leaned in, her nose almost touching the glass, squinting. Then she reached into her deep, soggy pocket and pulled out a pair of reading glasses that were held together at the bridge by a small piece of tape. Genevieve felt a vein throb in her temple. The audacity. "Excuse me," Genevieve said, her voice projecting across the silent showroom. It wasn't a question, it was a command. The woman turned. She had a soft face, lined with age, perhaps in her early 60s. Her eyes were bright blue, contrasting sharply with her drab appearance. Oh, hello there. Nasty weather out there, isn't it? Her accent was American, flat, unrefined. Genevieve closed the distance between them, stopping exactly 3 feet away. Close enough to intimidate, far enough to avoid contamination. This is a private establishment, madam. I know, the woman smiled, tucking her glasses back into her pocket. It's Sterling and Co. I've been meaning to stop by for a while. I was in the neighborhood for a meeting and got caught in the storm. A meeting? Genevieve raised an eyebrow, letting her eyes scan the woman's outfit slowly, dramatically, from the muddy sneakers to the wet hair. With whom? A sanitation department? Liam gasped softly in the background. The woman didn't flinch. She didn't look embarrassed. In fact, her smile widened slightly, though it didn't reach her eyes. You're Genevieve Sterling, aren't you? I recognize you from the magazine covers. I am, Genevieve said icily. And you are dripping water on a floor that costs $300 a square foot to maintain. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'd like to see a bag first, the woman said, pointing a callous finger at the midnight star. That one. The clasp looks interesting. Is it platinum or white gold? Genevieve laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. You want to see the midnight star? Do you have any idea what that is? It's a bag, the woman said simply. It is a $250,000 investment piece, Genevieve corrected her. It requires gloves to handle. It requires a security clearance to purchase. And quite frankly, it requires a bank account that I seriously doubt you possess. The woman shifted her weight. You shouldn't judge a book by its cover, Miss Sterling. My name is Charlotte Hale, and I'm very interested in the craftsmanship of your bags. Charlotte Hale, Genevieve repeated, mocking the name. Well, Charlotte, the craftsmanship is for clients. Actual clients. Now please, turn around and exit the store before I have security remove you for trespassing. Charlotte Hale stood her ground. For a moment, the air in the store felt heavier, charged with static. I have money, she said quietly. I'm willing to buy. We don't sell to just anyone who wanders in off the street with a few crumpled bills. Genevieve sneered. We curate our clientele. You do not fit the image of Sterling and Co. You tarnish it just by standing there. You look like you clean houses for a living, and honestly, looking at those fingernails, you probably aren't very good at it. It was a cruel, unnecessary dig. Liam looked away, unable to watch. Charlotte looked down at her hands. They were rough, yes. Gardening hands. Working hands. She looked back up at Genevieve. I'm going to give you one chance to change your tone, Charlotte said. Her voice had dropped an octave. It was no longer the voice of a confused grandmother, it was the voice of someone who was used to being obeyed. I came here to do business. And I am telling you, Genevieve stepped closer, her perfume overpowering the smell of rain, that your business is worth nothing to me. Get out. Genevieve signaled to the large man standing by the entrance, Bruno, the head of security. He was 6'5", a former linebacker who wore a suit that struggled to contain his shoulders. Bruno, Genevieve said, her eyes never leaving Charlotte's face. Escort this woman out. She's disturbing the peace. Charlotte didn't move. She reached into her raincoat again. Bruno tensed, his hand moving toward his belt, but she simply pulled out a phone. It was an older model, the screen cracked in the corner. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Charlotte said to Bruno, not aggressively, but with a calm assurance that made the big man pause. He takes orders from me, Genevieve snapped. Bruno, move her. Ms. Sterling, Liam interjected, stepping forward nervously. Maybe we should just let her look. The store is empty. Silence, Genevieve spun on him. This is how standards erode, Liam. You let one person like this in, and suddenly we're a tourist trap. We are a luxury brand. We sell dreams. Does she look like a dream to you? She looks like a nightmare. She turned back to Charlotte. You are trespassing. If you don't leave in 10 seconds, I will have the police called, and you will be arrested for vagrancy. Charlotte tapped the screen of her phone, sending a text message. She looked up, her expression unreadable. I'm waiting for a friend. We agreed to meet here. A friend? Genevieve scoffed. Does he push a shopping cart too? No, Charlotte said. He usually takes a helicopter. Genevieve burst out laughing. It was a manic, incredulous laugh. A helicopter! Oh, this is rich. Is he landing on the roof? Or maybe he's parking his invisible jet on Fifth Avenue. She shook her head, pity mixed with disdain. You're delusional. You're not just poor, you're crazy. That's sad, really. She snapped her fingers at Bruno. Grab her arm, throw her out into the rain. Bruno moved in. He reached out a massive hand to grip Charlotte's shoulder. Don't touch me, Charlotte warned, her voice sharp as a whip. I'm doing my job, lady, Bruno grunted. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into the wet fabric of her trench coat. He began to physically drag her toward the door. Unhand me, Charlotte shouted, struggling to keep her footing on the slippery marble. This is assault. This is pest control, Genevieve yelled back, enjoying the power trip. Get her out of my sight. The scene was ugly. Charlotte dug her heels in, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Bruno was strong, but Charlotte was dead weight. They were halfway to the door when a black limousine pulled up to the curb outside, splashing water onto the sidewalk. The car was sleek, ominous, and undeniably expensive. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, extended wheelbase, jet black with tinted windows. It ignored the no-standing zone. The driver's door opened, and a chauffeur in full livery stepped out, opening a large black umbrella. He moved to the rear passenger door and opened it. Inside the store, Genevieve froze. She knew that car. Everyone in New York high society knew that car. There were only 3 people in the city who drove custom Phantoms like that, and 2 of them were in federal prison. The third was Harrison Blackwood. Harrison Blackwood was not just a billionaire. He was an institution. He was the CEO of Blackwood Holdings, a conglomerate that owned half the real estate in Manhattan, a major stake in 3 tech giants, and, crucially, was the primary financier for the upcoming Fashion Week. He was old money and new money combined. He was the kind of man Genevieve had spent 10 years trying to get a meeting with, only to be rejected by his third assistant every time. Wait, Genevieve hissed at Bruno. Stop. Bruno stopped, still holding Charlotte's arm. Through the glass doors, they watched as a man stepped out of the Rolls-Royce. He was tall, silver-haired, impeccable in a charcoal Savile Row suit. He radiated power. He checked his watch, looked up at the sign that said Sterling & Co., and frowned. It's Harrison Blackwood, Genevieve whispered, her face draining of color. Panic and excitement warred in her chest. If Harrison Blackwood was coming into her store, it could save her. If he saw her throwing out a vagrant, it might look bad. Or perhaps he would appreciate that she kept the riffraff out. Fix your tie, Liam, she barked. She smoothed her skirt, pinched her cheeks to bring color back, and plastered a winning smile on her face. Bruno, put her in the corner. Hide her behind the mannequin, Genevieve ordered quickly. Don't let him see the trash. Bruno shoved Charlotte roughly behind a display of silk scarves. Charlotte stumbled but didn't fall. She straightened her coat, her eyes fixed on the door. The bell chimed. Harrison Blackwood entered the store. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The air seemed to get thinner. Mr. Blackwood, Genevieve glided forward, extending a hand, her voice dripping with honey. What an unexpected honor. I'm Genevieve Sterling. Welcome to our flagship. Harrison didn't take her hand. He didn't even look at her. His grey eyes scanned the room, sharp and searching. He looked past the displays, past the nervous Liam, past the security guard. Where is she? Harrison asked, his voice deep and gravelly. Genevieve blinked, confused. Where is... Who? Are you looking for a specific piece? We have the new collection in the back. I am looking for Charlotte. Harrison interrupted, his tone impatient. She texted me she was being assaulted. Genevieve's heart stopped. She felt a cold sensation trickle down her spine. She looked at the corner where Bruno was blocking the view. Charlotte? Genevieve laughed nervously. I think there must be a mistake, Mr. Blackwood. There's nobody here by that name. Unless you mean... Well, we had a disturbance with a homeless woman, but we were just handling it. Homeless woman? Harrison's eyes narrowed. From behind the silk scarves, a voice rang out. Clear, authoritative. Harrison, over here. Bruno tried to step in front of her, but Charlotte stepped around him. She walked into the center of the room, her sneakers squeaking, her trench coat dripping. Genevieve watched in horror, waiting for Harrison Blackwood to recoil in disgust. She waited for him to call security. She waited for him to laugh at the absurdity of this wet dog calling his name. Instead, Harrison Blackwood's face softened. He walked right past Genevieve as if she were a ghost. He walked up to Charlotte, ignored the mud, ignored the water, and took both of her hands in his. Then, to Genevieve's absolute shock, the billionaire bowed his head. "I'm so sorry I'm late, Lottie," Harrison said gently. "The tunnel was a nightmare. Are you all right?" Charlotte looked at Harrison, then slowly turned her eyes to Genevieve. The look she gave the brand owner was no longer one of a customer. It was the look of a judge delivering a verdict. "No, Harrison," Charlotte said. "I'm not all right. I've just been informed that I'm trash, that I'm a nightmare, and apparently I'm being arrested for vagrancy." Harrison slowly turned to face Genevieve. The warmth vanished from his face, replaced by a cold fury that was far more terrifying than Genevieve's shouting. "You," Harrison said, his voice barely a whisper. "You said that to her?" I, Genevieve stammered, her world tilting on its axis. She was wet. She didn't look. I didn't know." "You didn't know?" Harrison stepped closer to Genevieve. "Do you know who this is?" Genevieve shook her head, unable to speak. "This is Charlotte Hale," Harrison announced, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "Founder of Hale Dynamics, the woman who invented the microprocessor technology that runs half the world's banking systems. She sold her company for $12 billion 4 years ago." Genevieve felt her knees give way. 12 billion. "But more importantly for you," Harrison continued, pointing a finger at the floor. "Do you know who owns this building? Who owns the retail block from 52nd to 54th Street? Genevieve's eyes widened. She knew the building was owned by a holding company called Blue Sky Ventures. She had never looked into who was behind it. "Blue Sky Ventures," Charlotte said, stepping forward. "That's my private family office. I bought this building 6 months ago, Genevieve. I am your landlord." The silence that followed was absolute. "And," Charlotte added, pulling the reading glasses out of her pocket again, "I'm also the majority shareholder of the private equity firm that holds your debt. I came here today to decide if I should approve your request for a loan extension. I wanted to see how you treated your customers when you thought no one important was watching." Charlotte smiled, and it was terrifying. "I think I have my answer." The silence inside Sterling & Co. was heavy, pressing against Genevieve's eardrums like deep water. Outside, the storm continued to batter the glass, but inside, the climate-controlled air felt suddenly suffocating. Genevieve's mouth opened and closed, a goldfish gasping for oxygen. Her mind was racing, trying to reassemble the shattered pieces of her reality. Landlord, investor, $12 billion. The words bounced around her skull, refusing to settle. "Ms. Hale," Genevieve managed to choke out. Her voice, usually a weapon of sharp precision, was reduced to a brittle whisper. She took a half-step forward, her hands trembling. Clearly there has been a misunderstanding. A terrible, unfortunate misunderstanding. If I had known—" "Stop," Charlotte said. She didn't shout. She didn't have to. The single syllable was spoken with the finality of a gavel striking wood. Charlotte took a step closer to Genevieve. Up close, without the prejudice of wealth blinding her, Genevieve could finally see the texture of the woman's skin. Not worn from poverty, but weathered from experience. The eyes were not dull, they were razor-sharp, calculating, and currently filled with a profound disappointment. "If you had known," Charlotte repeated slowly. "That is the problem, Genevieve. If you had known I was worth billions, you would have offered me champagne. You would have cleared the store. You would have let me walk on your precious marble with muddy boots and thanked me for the privilege." Charlotte gestured around the store, her hand sweeping over the pristine displays. "You only treat people with dignity if you think you can extract value from them. That isn't luxury, Genevieve. That's prostitution of the soul, and it's bad business." Harrison Blackwood stood beside Charlotte, his presence a dark, looming tower of judgment. He looked at Bruno, the security guard who was still standing awkwardly by the scarves, looking as if he wished he could dissolve into the drywall. "You put your hands on her," Harrison said to the guard. His voice was low, dangerous. Bruno swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Sir, I was just following orders. Ms. Sterling told me." "A man is responsible for his own actions," Harrison cut him off. "If you ever touch her again, if you ever come within 50 feet of her, my legal team will ensure you never work in this city again. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Absolutely, sir," Bruno stammered, backing away until he hit the wall. Charlotte turned her attention back to Genevieve. She reached into her pocket again, but this time, instead of the taped-up glasses, she pulled out a simple folded piece of paper. It was damp from the rain. "I came here today with the intention of signing the lease renewal for this flagship location," Charlotte said, unfolding the paper, "and to approve the bridge loan your CFO requested last week to cover your manufacturing debts in Italy." Genevieve felt the blood drain from her face. That bridge loan was the only thing keeping the lights on. Without it, the creditors would seize the inventory within 30 days. "Please," Genevieve begged, her pride evaporating instantly. "Charlotte, Ms. Hale, we can discuss this. My behavior was inexcusable, I admit that. I was stressed. The market pressures. I took it out on you. It was a mistake. Let me make it right. Let me show you the collection. Let me—" Charlotte looked at the paper. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she tore it in half. The sound of the tearing paper was louder than the thunder outside. She tore it again, and again, until the contract was nothing but confetti in her calloused hands. She opened her fingers and let the pieces flutter down onto the spotlessly polished floor that Genevieve loved so much. "You're worried about the floor?" Charlotte asked softly. "Now you have a mess to clean up." "Ms. Hale, please," Genevieve's voice cracked. She was on the verge of tears, a rare sight for the Ice Queen of Fifth Avenue. "This company is my life. My grandfather started this brand." "And you are finishing it," Charlotte said. "I am rejecting the loan extension. I will be instructing my team at Blue Sky Ventures to review the terms of your lease." "You have a conduct clause, Genevieve. Actions that bring disrepute to the property. I'd say assaulting the landlord counts." Charlotte turned away, dismissing Genevieve as if she were a piece of outdated furniture. She looked toward the counter where Liam was standing. The young manager was pale, clutching a pricing gun like a lifeline. "You," Charlotte said. Liam jumped. Me? What is your name?" "Liam, ma'am, Liam Corvin." Charlotte nodded. "When I came in, you tried to stop her. You wanted to give me a moment to dry off. You looked at me like a human being, not a stain." I'm sorry I didn't do more," Liam whispered. "You did enough to show character," Charlotte said. She reached into her trench coat pocket and pulled out a small, slightly wet business card. She placed it on the glass counter. "I'm opening a new philanthropic foundation next month. We need an operations manager. Someone with empathy. Someone who understands that service isn't about snobbery. If you're tired of working for a woman who values flaws over people, call that number." Liam looked at the card, then at Genevieve. Genevieve stared back, her eyes pleading with him not to take it, not to add to her humiliation. Liam picked up the card. "Thank you, Ms. Hale. I'll call you today." "Good." Charlotte turned back to Harrison. "I'm ready to go now. I've seen enough." Harrison nodded. He glared one last time at Genevieve. "You made a big mistake today, Mrs. Sterling. You'll be lucky if you still have a store to stand in by Christmas." The billionaire placed a protective hand on Charlotte's back, and together they walked out into the rain. The chauffeur was waiting with the umbrella, but Charlotte didn't seem to mind the water anymore. The door swung shut. Genevieve Sterling was left alone in her beautiful, silent, empty store. The shredded contract lay at her feet. Liam was already taking off his name tag. For the first time in her life, the marble floor didn't look expensive. It just looked cold. The next morning, the sun rose over Manhattan, indifferent to the fact that Genevieve Sterling's life was imploding. Genevieve sat in her office on the 40th floor of the Sterling Tower, a few blocks away from the flagship store. She hadn't slept. She was still wearing the same clothes from yesterday, though she had tried to freshen her makeup. The empty coffee cups on her mahogany desk were a testament to her anxiety. She had spent the night calling members of the board, trying to get ahead of the story. She spun a narrative. A minor misunderstanding with a potential investor. A clash of personalities. Nothing that couldn't be smoothed over. She was lying, and she knew it. But survival was the only instinct she had left. Her assistant, a nervous woman named Sarah, buzzed in. "Ms. Sterling? Sebastian Cross is here to see you." Genevieve froze. Sebastian Cross. He wasn't just a board member, he was a corporate raider. He represented the conglomerate that owned 30% of Sterling & Co. He had been trying to oust Genevieve for 2 years, arguing that the brand needed modernization, which was corporate speak for mass production and cheaper materials. Send him in, Genevieve said, sitting up straighter. She checked her reflection in her compact mirror. She looked tired, but fierce. She had to be fierce. The door opened and Sebastian walked in. He was a man who looked like he was carved out of shark cartilage, slick, sharp, and moving with a predatory grace. He wore a navy suit with a pinstripe so thin it was almost invisible. He didn't sit down. "Genevieve," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "You look terrible." "It's been a long night, Sebastian," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "Preparing the quarterly reports." "Is that what you were doing?" Sebastian smirked. He tossed a tablet onto her desk. It slid across the mahogany and stopped right in front of her hands. "Because I thought you were up all night trying to figure out why Hale Dynamics just pulled their entire portfolio of support from our supply chain financing." Genevieve looked at the tablet. It displayed an email from the bank. "Credit facility suspended." "I can fix it," Genevieve said quickly. "I have a meeting scheduled with Charlotte Hale. I'm going to apologize personally." "You don't have a meeting," Sebastian corrected her. "I called her office this morning. Her secretary laughed at me." "Laughed, Genevieve? Do you know how rare it is for a secretary to laugh at me?" He walked around the desk, invading her personal space. "Word is out on the street. You kicked the golden goose. You insulted the one woman in New York who has more liquid cash than God." "She came in looking like a beggar," Genevieve snapped, her temper flaring. "How was I supposed to know? It was a setup. She trapped me." "It doesn't matter." Sebastian slammed his hand on the desk, making the coffee cups jump. "This is business. You treat everyone like they're the Queen of England until their credit card declines. That is rule number 1. But you've always been too arrogant for your own good. You think the sterling name protects you. The name is an asset, and right now you are a liability." "I am the majority shareholder," Genevieve hissed, standing up to meet his glare. "You can't touch me." "Technically, yes," Sebastian smiled, a cold, humorless expression. "You own 51%, but check the covenants in your debt agreement, the one with Blue Sky Ventures, Charlotte's company." Genevieve felt a knot form in her stomach. "What about them?" "There's a key man clause," Sebastian explained, relishing every word. "Or rather, a competency clause. If the CEO acts in a way that materially damages the financial viability of the company, the debt holders can demand immediate repayment. If you can't pay, they can convert the debt into equity." He leaned in close. "Charlotte Hale isn't just pulling the loan, Genevieve. She's calling the debt. All of it. $80 million. Due immediately." Genevieve slumped back into her chair. 80 million. She didn't have 8 million, let alone 80. All the cash was tied up in the new Tokyo store and the inventory floating on ships from Italy. "If she calls the debt," Genevieve whispered, "she takes the company." "Exactly," Sebastian said. "She will own Sterling & Co. by the end of the week. And I've already been in touch with her team. If I can deliver your resignation by noon today, she might agree to keep the brand alive and retain the minority shareholders, which includes me." "You want me to resign?" Genevieve looked at him, horrified. "This is my legacy. My father gave me this company." "And you threw it away because you didn't like someone's raincoat," Sebastian shrugged. "Here are your options, Jen. Option A, you fight. Charlotte Hale sues you, bankrupts the company, seizes the assets, and you leave with nothing but the clothes on your back, which ironically is how she entered your store. Option B, you sign the resignation. You step down as CEO. We frame it as a health sabbatical. You keep your personal shares, but you have no voting power." He pulled a document from his inside jacket pocket and placed it gently on top of the tablet. "Tick-tock, Genevieve. The markets open in 20 minutes. If the news of the debt recall hits Bloomberg before you resign, the stock price crashes, and even your personal shares will be worthless." Genevieve stared at the paper. The walls of her office, usually a symbol of her power, felt like they were closing in. She thought of Charlotte Hale's face, the calmness, the absolute authority. "I wanted to see how you treated your customers when you thought no one important was watching." She reached for her gold fountain pen, a gift from her late father. Her hand shook so violently she dropped it. It clattered against the desk, leaving a small scratch on the wood. "I need to talk to her," Genevieve said, desperation clawing at her throat. "I need one chance, just one." Sebastian checked his Rolex. You're delusional. She's currently at the Met Gala Planning Committee breakfast. You think she's going to take your call? I know where she lives, Genevieve said, a frantic plan forming in her mind. She has that estate in the Hamptons, but during the week she stays at the penthouse at the Pierre. I read it in Vanity Fair. Stalking her, Sebastian sighed, shaking his head. That will definitely help your case. I'm not resigning, Sebastian, Genevieve said, her voice hardening. She picked up the pen. Not until I look her in the eye and beg. I don't care what it takes. I built this brand. I'm not losing it to a woman in dirty sneakers without a fight. She grabbed her purse and ran out of the office, leaving Sebastian Cross standing alone. He watched her go, then pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. She's running, Sebastian said into the phone. She's heading to the Pierre. Yes, let her go. The more desperate she looks, the easier it will be to justify the hostile takeover. Make sure the paparazzi are there. He hung up and looked at the unsigned resignation letter. Goodbye, Genevieve. Genevieve burst out of the Sterling Tower onto the sidewalk. The morning sun was bright, mocking the darkness that had consumed her career in less than 24 hours. She reached for her phone to summon her driver, Grigori, but her fingers froze over the screen. Grigori was paid through the company account. If Sebastian Cross had already started the hostile takeover proceedings, he might have frozen her expense accounts. She couldn't risk the humiliation of the app declining her ride request. She looked at the yellow cabs streaming down the avenue. She hadn't hailed a cab in 15 years. It was something her assistants did. It was something commoners did, but desperation has a way of erasing standards. Genevieve stepped off the curb, waving her arm frantically. 3 cabs passed her, their off-duty lights on. The 4th swerved around her. The 5th stopped, but a businessman in a grey suit beat her to the door. I need that cab, Genevieve shouted, her voice shrill. I am Genevieve Sterling. The businessman looked at her, then at her wild eyes and the smudge of mascara under her left eye. He didn't recognize the fashion icon. He just saw a frantic woman screaming on a street corner. He got in and slammed the door. Genevieve let out a scream of frustration that turned heads. She began to run. The Pierre Hotel was only 6 blocks away, but in her 4-inch Louboutins, it felt like a marathon. She ran past the high-end boutiques, Versace, Armani, Bergdorf Goodman. These were her peers, her competitors. She imagined the managers inside watching her, laughing at the Queen of Sterling & Co., sprinting like a thief fleeing a crime scene. By the time she reached the awning of the Pierre, she was breathless. Her perfect bun had loosened, strands of blonde hair sticking to her clammy neck. She was sweating. She stormed toward the revolving doors, but a white-gloved doorman stepped in her path. "Good morning, madam," he said, his tone polite, but his body blocking her way. "May I help you?" "I am here to see a guest," Genevieve panted, trying to smooth her blazer. "Charlotte Hale. She's in the penthouse." The doorman didn't move. He looked her up and down. It was a look Genevieve knew well. It was the same look she had given Charlotte just yesterday. The assessment, the judgment. "Do you belong here?" "Ms. Hale is currently in a private meeting in the rotunda," the doorman said. "Unless you are on the list." "I don't need to be on a list," Genevieve snapped, pushing past him. "I am a close business associate." She shoved through the revolving door before he could physically stop her. She marched through the opulent lobby, her heels clacking loudly against the tile, echoing under the frescoed ceilings. Guests in silk robes and tailored suits turned to stare. Genevieve Sterling, usually the picture of composure, looked like a woman unhinged. She turned the corner into the rotunda, the hotel's famous oval room with its murals of pastoral scenes. It was a place of hushed whispers and clinking china. And there she was. Charlotte Hale sat at a corner table by the window. She was no longer wearing the muddy trench coat. Today she wore a cream-colored cashmere sweater and pearl earrings that were likely worth more than Genevieve's apartment. She looked regal, calm, and utterly untouchable. But it was the person sitting across from her that made Genevieve stumble. It was Liam. The boy she had berated yesterday, the floor manager she had treated like furniture. He was wearing a new suit, sharp, navy blue, clearly not off the rack. He was laughing at something Charlotte had said, holding a porcelain teacup with a confidence Genevieve had never seen him possess. They looked like family, or partners. Genevieve felt a surge of irrational anger mixed with terror. She marched across the room. "Charlotte." The room went silent. A waiter froze mid-pour. Charlotte Hale lowered her teacup slowly. She didn't look surprised. She looked resigned, as if she had been expecting a tedious interruption. "Genevieve," Charlotte said, her voice level, "I didn't think you'd be up this early. Usually the creative types don't surface until noon. Isn't that what you told the board last month?" Genevieve gripped the back of an empty chair, her knuckles white. "We need to talk. Now." "I'm in a meeting," Charlotte said, gesturing to Liam. "I believe you know my new director of operations for the Hale Foundation. Liam was just telling me about the inventory protocols he developed at your store. He has some brilliant ideas. It's a shame you never listened to him." Liam looked at Genevieve. There was no fear in his eyes anymore. Just pity. "Hello, Miss Sterling." "I don't care about the boy," Genevieve hissed, leaning over the table. "You are destroying my life, Charlotte. Sebastian Cross told me you're calling the debt. You can't do that. It will bankrupt the company. It will kill the brand." "The brand is already dead, Genevieve," Charlotte said, buttering a scone. "You killed it. I'm just arranging the funeral." "You're doing this out of spite," Genevieve's voice rose, cracking. "Because I was rude to you. Is that it? You're going to destroy a 100-year-old legacy because I didn't like your raincoat?" Charlotte finally looked up, her blue eyes icy. "Sit down, Genevieve. Before you embarrass yourself further." Genevieve sank into the chair, her legs giving out. "You think this is about a raincoat?" Charlotte asked quietly. "You think I make billion-dollar decisions based on my feelings? You really are a narcissist." Charlotte wiped her mouth with a linen napkin. "When I left your store yesterday, I had my team audit your financials. I wanted to know if your behavior was an anomaly or a symptom of a rot in the corporate culture." She leaned forward. "Do you know what I found?" Genevieve shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I found that you've been cutting corners on materials for 3 years. Charlotte listed the sins on her fingers. "You switched from Italian leather to a synthetic blend without disclosing it to customers. You stopped paying your interns. You've been deferring maintenance on your warehouses to fund your private jet travel." Charlotte's voice was hard as granite. "You treated me like trash because that is how you treat everyone who can't do something for you. The muddy raincoat didn't offend you, Genevieve. It exposed you. It showed me that you value appearance over substance. And in my business, substance is the only thing that matters." "I can change," Genevieve whispered. "I can fix it. I'll resign from the board. I'll take a pay cut. Just don't liquidate the company, please. It's all I have." It was the first honest thing she had said in years. She was stripped bare. No arrogance, no posturing, just a terrified woman watching her identity crumble. Charlotte looked at her, and for a fleeting second there was a flicker of something softness. "It's too late for that," Charlotte said, and then the flashbulbs went off. The sudden burst of white light blinded Genevieve. She spun around in her chair. Through the arched entrance of the rotunda, a pack of 6 photographers had pushed past the hotel security. They were shouting, their cameras clicking furiously. "Genevieve! Genevieve! Is it true you're bankrupt? Ms. Sterling, look this way. Did you really assault a homeless woman? Is the company being sold to Amazon?" Genevieve shielded her face with her hand. "No, get out! Get them out!" She looked wildly at Charlotte. "You did this. You called them." Charlotte looked genuinely annoyed. She signaled to her personal security detail, who were already moving to intercept the paparazzi. "I don't play games with the press, Genevieve. I despise publicity." Genevieve's phone buzzed in her pocket. Then it buzzed again. And again. A constant vibration against her hip. She pulled it out. It was a text from Sebastian Cross. "Check the news. Thanks for the resignation." Genevieve opened the news app with trembling fingers. The headline on the New York Post was already live. "Meltdown on faith of Sterling Iris begs for mercy." There was a photo, a grainy, zoomed-in shot taken through the window of the hotel just moments ago. It showed Genevieve Sterling, hair messy, face contorted in desperation, practically kneeling at the table while Charlotte Hale looked on coolly. And below that, a leaked document. Her resignation letter, the one she hadn't signed. But the article said she had. Sources close to the board confirmed Genevieve Sterling has stepped down effective immediately due to severe exhaustion and mental instability. He set me up, Genevieve whispered, the phone slipping from her hand onto the table. Sebastian, he knew I'd come here. He sent the photographers. He leaked the letter. She looked at Charlotte. He used you to get to me. Charlotte picked up Genevieve's phone and looked at the text from Sebastian. She read it, her expression darkening. Sebastian Cross, Charlotte murmured. The shark. Charlotte stood up. The photographers were being wrestled out by security, but the damage was done. The image of the broken queen of fashion was already circulating the globe. He played us both, Charlotte said. He wanted you out so he could strip the company for parts. He knew if he provoked you, you'd cause a scene. And he knew if he tipped me off about the financials, I'd pull the plug. Genevieve put her head in her hands. It's over. He wins. He wins, Charlotte agreed, if we let him. Genevieve looked up, confused. What? Charlotte Hale was not a woman who liked being manipulated. She looked at the pathetic figure of Genevieve Sterling and then at the ambitious, ruthless maneuver Sebastian Cross had just pulled. Charlotte hated incompetence, yes, but she hated treachery even more. Liam, Charlotte said, turning to the young man, get Harrison on the phone. Tell him to pause the debt recall. Liam's eyes widened. Ms. Hale? Do it. Charlotte turned back to Genevieve. Get up. Why? Genevieve asked, dazed. Because you look pathetic, and I don't do business with pathetic people, Charlotte snapped. Sebastian Cross thinks he's clever. He thinks he can use my money and my reputation to stage a coup. He thinks he can fire you, liquidate the assets, and walk away with a golden parachute while I take the heat for destroying a legacy brand. Charlotte smoothed her cashmere sweater. A dangerous glint appeared in her eye, the kind of look that toppled governments and merged conglomerates. Nobody uses me as a weapon without my permission, Charlotte said. She reached out a hand to Genevieve. Genevieve stared at the hand. It was the hand of the woman she had tried to throw out into the rain. The hand she had insulted. I don't understand, Genevieve said. You hate me. I don't like you, Charlotte corrected. You're rude, classless, and you have terrible judgment. But you built this brand. You know the product. Sebastian is a hedge fund manager. He doesn't know silk from polyester. If he takes over, the company is gone in 6 months. Charlotte wiggled her fingers. Take my hand, Genevieve. I'm offering you a deal. Not charity, a deal. Genevieve stood up. She took Charlotte's hand. It was warm and strong. What's the deal? Genevieve asked, wiping her face. We're going to crash the board meeting, Charlotte said. I'm going to buy your debt, but I'm converting it to equity. I will own 60% of Sterling & Co. You will remain as creative director, not CEO. You lose the business control. You answer to me. And Liam here. She patted Liam on the shoulder. Liam is going to be the new CEO. You will report to the man you tried to fire. Genevieve looked at Liam. The young man stood taller, shocked but ready. It was a humiliation, yes. But it was also a lifeline. And Sebastian? Genevieve asked. Charlotte smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who has just spotted a slower, fatter prey. Sebastian, Charlotte said, is about to learn why you never ever try to hustle a billionaire. The boardroom of Sterling & Cooper was a glass box suspended 40 floors above the city. Sebastian Cross sat at the head of the table, his feet resting on the polished wood. Around him, the other 6 board members looked nervous. Is this legal, Sebastian? Asked Mrs. Higgins, an elderly shareholder, forcing her out like this. The press release says she resigned, but... It's necessary. Sebastian waved a hand dismissively. Genevieve is toxic. You saw the photos. She's having a breakdown. We have a fiduciary duty to protect the assets. We sell the inventory to the discount chains. We sell the real estate to Blackwood Holdings, and we all walk away with a 20% premium on our shares. He checked his watch. I have the liquidators coming in at 11 Nishi a.m. The heavy double doors of the boardroom swung open. Sorry we're late, a voice rang out. Sebastian dropped his feet from the table. Genevieve Sterling walked in. She had fixed her hair. She had washed her face. She was still wearing the same clothes, but she walked with a renewed, cold purpose. Genevieve, Sebastian stood up, feigning concern. My dear, you should be resting. Security. Why was she let up here? She's with me, said a voice behind her. Charlotte Hale stepped into the room. She was followed by Harrison Blackwood and trailing slightly behind Liam. The air left the room. Sebastian Cross paled. Ms. Hale, Sebastian stammered, smoothing his tie. I didn't realize. We were just discussing the transition. As you know, Ms. Sterling has resigned. I rescinded it, Genevieve said, throwing the unsigned letter onto the table. And I'm not resigning. You have no choice, Sebastian snapped, his mask slipping. The debt is being called. The company is insolvent. Unless Ms. Hale here is planning to write a charity check, you are finished. Charlotte walked to the other end of the table, opposite Sebastian. She placed her leather handbag on the surface. I'm not writing a charity check, Charlotte said calmly. I've just purchased the outstanding debt from the banking syndicate, all 80 million of it. Sebastian froze. You bought the debt? And, Harrison Blackwood stepped forward, his voice deep and rumbling. Blackwood Holdings has just purchased the 15% stake previously held by the Tokyo investors. We closed the deal 10 minutes ago. Charlotte leaned on the table. Which means, Sebastian, that between my debt-to-equity conversion and Harrison's shares, and Genevieve's personal holding, we now control 85% of the voting stock. Sebastian looked around the room. The other board members were shrinking away from him. He realized with a dawning horror that the trap he had set for Genevieve had just snapped shut on his own leg. You can't do this, Sebastian whispered. It's done, Charlotte said. Now, for the first order of business of the new board. She looked at Liam. Mr. Corvin. Liam stepped forward. He looked at Sebastian, the man who had sneered at him in the hallway for 3 years. Mr. Cross, Liam said, his voice steady, you are removed from the board for cause, specifically for corporate espionage, market manipulation, and breach of fiduciary duty. You can't fire me, Sebastian screamed. I have a contract. You can take it up with legal, Charlotte said, bored. Bruno is waiting outside to escort you. And Sebastian? Sebastian stopped at the door, his face purple with rage. Don't forget your raincoat, Charlotte said. It looks like it's going to rain. As security dragged Sebastian out of the room, silence returned to the boardroom. Genevieve looked at Charlotte. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Charlotte said, pulling out a thick binder. We have a lot of work to do. And Genevieve? Yes? Your first task is to clean the floors of the flagship store, Charlotte said, personally, with a mop. Genevieve blinked. She looked at Liam, her new boss. She looked at Harrison, then she looked at Charlotte. She swallowed her pride, finally and completely. I'll get the bucket, Genevieve said. And for the first time in the history of Sterling & Co., the owner went to work. 6 months later, the autumn rain returned to New York City. The sky was a bruised shade of purple, and the wind howled through the canyons of Manhattan. But inside the flagship store of Sterling & Co., the atmosphere had shifted entirely. The intimidating silence was gone, replaced by a soft, welcoming hum of activity. The glass doors were propped open, despite the weather, signaling that all were welcome. The floor staff, now retrained under Liam's empathetic leadership, were no longer guards. They were hosts. Genevieve Sterling stood on the mezzanine, looking down. She wore a simple black turtleneck and slacks. Her hair was loose. She looked younger, lighter. She wasn't watching for loiterers to evict. She was watching customers, real people, diverse and varied, interacting with her new collection. It was called The Storm. The centerpiece of the display wasn't a diamond clutch or a delicate silk scarf. It was a trench coat. High quality, durable, waterproof, and beautifully cut. It was a homage to the beige coat Charlotte Hale had worn that fateful day. Sales are up 40% this quarter, a voice said beside her. Genevieve turned to see Liam. He looked tired but happy, holding a tablet. The new line is a hit, Liam said. People love the story, the idea that luxury should be durable, not just decorative. You're a genius, Genevieve. I'm not a genius, Liam. Genevieve smiled, a genuine expression that crinkled her eyes. I just finally learned how to listen. The front doors opened. A woman walked in, shaking off a wet umbrella. It was Charlotte Hale. She wasn't wearing the beige coat today. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, but she still wore the same comfortable sneakers. Harrison Blackwood was waiting in the car outside, but Charlotte had come in alone. Genevieve walked down the stairs to meet her. There was no clicking of heels, no frantic rush to impress. Charlotte, Genevieve said warmly, welcome back. The store looks good, Jen. Charlotte nodded, looking around. It feels human. We try, Genevieve said. Can I get you some tea? Or perhaps a towel? Charlotte chuckled. I'm dry today, thank you. I just came to drop off the quarterly review from the board. You've met your targets. The debt restructuring is ahead of schedule. She handed Genevieve a file. Then she paused, looking at the display of the trench coats. You turned your biggest humiliation into your bestseller, Charlotte noted, raising an eyebrow. That is very resourceful. I learned from the best, Genevieve replied. You told me that substance matters. This coat, you can wear it in a hurricane and it won't fail you. It's not just for show. Charlotte smiled. I'm proud of you, Genevieve. You've earned your place back. I'm just an employee now, Genevieve shrugged, and I prefer it. It turns out being the queen was exhausted. Being a designer is much more fulfilling. Charlotte turned to leave, but stopped at the door. She looked back at Genevieve, then at Liam, who was helping an elderly tourist with a scarf. You know, Charlotte said softly, they say money screams, but wealth whispers. For a long time, this store was screaming, Genevieve, it's nice to finally hear it whisper. With a nod, the billionaire stepped out into the rain. Genevieve watched her go. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of rain and white tea. She picked up a mop that was leaning discreetly in the corner, a reminder she kept for herself, and wiped away a small puddle near the entrance. Then she turned back to her work, ready to serve whoever walked through the door next. And that is the story of how Genevieve Sterling lost her ego to save her soul. It's a powerful reminder that you never truly know who you are talking to. We live in a world obsessed with image, with the flex, with showing off. But as Charlotte Hale showed us, true power doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to be flashy. It just needs to be confident. Genevieve judged a book by its cover, and it almost cost her everything. But unlike many, she was given a second chance. A chance to learn that dignity is something you give to others, not just something you demand for yourself. What did you think of Charlotte's reaction? Would you have given Genevieve a second chance, or would you have let the company fail? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of karma, redemption, and the reality of the ultra-wealthy, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Remember, be kind to everyone you meet. You never know who might be holding the keys to your future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.